Hello everyone, and welcome back to Earth to Rocco. Every year at Thanksgiving, Mama Gina makes her delicious butternut squash soup. It's something I always look forward to. She makes it super creamy and doesn't even use any dairy products, making it naturally vegan. It's got an incredible depth of flavor brought together by the vegetables and herbs that we're gonna be using. It's super simple to make with just a few ingredients. Let's squash away. So butternut squash can be really difficult to cut, but I have a trick that'll make it super easy and give it some extra flavor. This is what I did. First, ensure your squash is clean by giving it a good wash to remove any dirt from the skin. Now grab a large knife and cut the squash in half horizontally. Then cut it into quarters. Scoop out the seeds and fibrous bits from the fleshy part of the squash using a spoon. This step ensures your roasted squash will be free from any unwanted bits. Now place the squash on a baking sheet with the cut side up. Drizzle some extra virgin olive oil over the squash for that perfect roasted flavor. Then flip the squash pieces so the skin side is facing up. Lastly, we'll pop our squash in a preheated oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 to 40 minutes. The skin should be wrinkled and the squash will be fork tender. So now that we baked our butternut squash and allowed it to cool, it's really easy to peel. You can eat the peel of butternut squash, but we don't want it in the soup because it's not going to blend nicely. Don't worry if it breaks apart because it's all going to be blended anyway. Now that the butternut squash is all peeled, we're just going to give it a rough chop and move it into a mixing bowl. To the soup, I'm going to be adding some celery, potato, carrot, shallots, and garlic. This recipe is very forgiving, and if you don't have all the ingredients, you can always substitute for what you do have. The most important thing is the butternut squash. The potatoes also help to keep it creamy. So I'm just going to roughly chop the celery. You can use the leaves. The leaves actually have quite a bit of flavor. So I'll just set this aside. And now I'll roughly chop the shallots. I'm crying. Whew. Whew. I have 2 cloves of garlic and I'm just going to remove the skin. I'm also going to roughly chop the potato and carrot. We want to chop these a little bit smaller because they'll take longer to cook. So now I'll take this over to the stove and start sauteing them up. So I'm going to start by turning the stove on to medium-high heat. So I have a deep pot here and I'm going to add in some olive oil. Now I'm going to add in the potato, celery, garlic, shallots, and carrot. So we'll just saute this for a couple minutes. So this has been sauteing for a few minutes and I can actually start smelling all the flavors melding together. Now it's time to add the butternut squash. We'll just give that a stir. Now I'm going to put in a whole container of vegetable broth. I'm just going to add a little bit of water because I want to make sure that the vegetables are completely submerged. You can always come back and add more water if it seems to dry out. So I have some fresh sage. I'm just going to rip it up and add it in. You can always use dried sage if you don't have fresh. I'm also going to put in some fresh thyme. Make sure to only use the leaves. Now we'll put in some salt and black pepper. So now we'll cover this and wait for it to come to a boil. Our soup is starting to boil, so I'm just gonna lower the heat to medium-low. I'll partially cover it and allow it to cook until the carrots and potatoes are tender. Let's check on the vegetables. So the vegetables appear to be tender. This took about 20 minutes for me, but it all depends on how big you cut your vegetables. So now I'm gonna turn off the heat and allow it to cool slightly before I start blending it. So now the soup is cool enough to be blended up, I think. You need to be really careful because it can splatter, especially if you're using an immersion blender like I am. You can also use a regular blender for this, but an immersion blender just tends to be a lot easier. All right, so we want to try to stay as close to the bottom as possible to prevent any splattering. At this point, I'm going to taste it just to see if I need to adjust any of the seasonings. Just a bit more salt and we're good. So we're just going to finish blending it till it's smooth and then we're ready to go. This smells like Thanksgiving. Time for a taste. There's such an incredible depth of flavor in there. It's smooth and silky and has such a deep, earthy flavor. This soup is best served warm. If it's too hot, you won't taste all of the flavors. Thanks for joining me in making this delicious butternut squash soup. Make it part of your next Thanksgiving meal and you won't squash anyone's expectations. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with my latest vegan recipes. Head on over to earthtorocco.com for the ingredients and instructions for today's recipe and all my fall recipes. Let's give thanks to everything Earth has to offer.